Explorers! We're playing Starfield. It's out. It's out.
Real.
It's real. It's a real thing. We actually played some. Welcome to the Starfield Lorecast. This is the Starship Lorecast that we're on currently, charting our courses through the cosmos. Welcome to the show. If you've tuned into some of the pre-release episodes, those are all in the past. This is a new era where we actually get to play the game that we've been waiting for years for, and we're playing it because it's out in early access. So Dave and I are going to talk about our early impressions and give you kind of a, I don't know, how many hours are you in, Dave? I'm in maybe 4 to 5 hours.
I think I'm around the same as you, 4 to 5 hours.
Okay,
right
so
yeah,
4 to 5 hours into the game. If you're worried about spoilers, then the only spoilers you're getting are things from like the first 4 to 5 hours of the game. And this game is massive, and there isn't really a whole lot you can do within that first 4 or 5 hours. You go on a few quests if you follow the main quest line, or you get to some key locations and go look around. There's just so much to do. So if you're worried about spoilers, then I guess don't listen to the episode, but we're not going to spoil too much. It's really just some early stuff. So, Dave, where do we start? There's so much to talk about.
I think it's time that we revert back to our very first episode we did, where we were bringing out MS Paint drawings, and we speculate some more. Oh, wait a second. We don't have to do that anymore.
Oh, we don't have to do that anymore. We actually have real actual facts because we're actually playing the game with real lore, and man, is there a lot. So let's just talk about the potential for lore in this so far. You have the magical space pieces that you find, right? That Constellation is collecting.
Yes.
And those, you get this like vision thing, and then somehow they're connected. Maybe there's an ancient alien race involved, all of that stuff. But beyond just that, we have a very interesting cast of characters. We've already, by 4 or 5 hours in, if you follow the main quest line, you meet some of the different characters from Constellation, and you even get into like Fallout style dialogue trees where you can ask them personal questions about themselves. Like, for example, Sarah, the lady who runs Constellation, I thought she was just going to be kind of this like serious hard ass kind of lady. If you dig in her little conversation tree, you find out that she opens up and she's like, "Oh yeah, I used to play in a band. I play drums." Did you find that,
funny.
Dave?
I haven't really asked anybody anything, because so one of the things that I took was the adoring fan.
Yeah, I grabbed that one too. Yes.
Yeah, and so like whenever I get back on the ship, it's like, oh, here he is. I've been talking about you in my speaker book.
I haven't run into him yet.
Oh, you haven't run into him yet?
No.
Oh, let me
somehow
tell you
I missed him. I don't know.
It's hilarious. Anytime I land the starship, he's like, "You did a great job landing the starship. By God, this is the best landing I've ever seen."
That's amazing. That's great. I can't wait to run into him. I think maybe I fast traveled through some of the spots in like, I don't know, New Atlantis, I'm guessing is where you run into him.
Yeah, I think I ran into a New Atlantis. Yeah.
So I kind of fast traveled like back and forth because I was figuring that stuff out at that point, and then I was just doing the main quest, and then I just got back on my ship and left. So I probably just passed by where he would have been if I just walked somewhere. Right. But that didn't happen. But yeah, so beyond the characters and things, there are books you can find. There's lots of books that you can just open up and read passages. Everything from like fictional novels to Origin of the Species by Charles Darwin to like a whole bunch of different things you can run into. There are terminals, like, so don't skip out on the terminals. If you're interested in the lore, don't skip out on the terminals. There's a space station that you're in early in the game, and is a specific terminal with like 6 or 7 different entries in it, and it details a alien species, not an intelligent alien species, but this organization that is doing testing on alien species in order to use them and weaponize them. And there's some details about a creature that is extremely violent that gets out. And
yes, so and there's a lot of environmental details as well that kind of like pair with that. Like, you can see where it broke out and where it's attacked people, and like you can, like, once you start piecing this, like, if you're not looking for it, you wouldn't necessarily see it, but once you kind of catch on, it's cool to see those details kind of like drawn into that.
Yeah, where the dead bodies are, and some of the conflict that happened in the room. So a lot of that stuff that we learn to expect from Bethesda, like environmental storytelling, along with like little bits of notes and things that help you piece together what happened. But I have a feeling that creature is going to be the Deathclaw of the series, and we're going to run across it in other places. That's my guess so far. But we don't know yet because we haven't played that far into it. So lots of density of lore and information. And let's just go down a list, Dave. We'll just go back and forth and share some of the things that really stand out to us. What's something that really stood out to you?
I think that since they're trying to sell this new universe, if you follow kind of the first like main side quest, which is Vanguard, it takes you down to this like orientation situation where you are like going through a museum. And it's funny because like, living near DC for most of my life and Bethesda being near DC, it is these people have been to many a museum, and you can tell from the way it's designed. It's a lot like a lot of the museums in DC. You go and you effectively learn the history of like Starfield from 2150 on. I think it's a really interesting way of kind of it's better than the Museum of History from Fallout 3, but
yeah, because that only has like a few things left in it.
Right. The story that they're telling and kind of like setting the foundation and rules of like these are the bad guys, like giving you basic, what's House of Varun? Here's what they are. What's Freestar Collective? Here's what they are. But then you can kind of pick up a little bit on the propaganda that they're kind of doing. Like it's light. It's not heavy. It's not overt. Fallout is like constantly overt. Like everything is turned up to 11 when it comes to, even it's satire or if it's like, filling into a certain faction, like everything's kind of turned up. This one's a little more subtle, I think, in some of the propaganda. But
in a lot of ways, I think it's more subtle, and I'll add on to that in a minute, but keep going.
I think that section, I felt a little lost. I thought in like what I was supposed to do, who I was, of like, okay, like I understand from, doing this podcast what the different factions are. But as far as like grounding myself in the universe of like, here's what's going on, like having the game kind of like almost refresh me and explain that to me, like in a a little condensed format that felt like I was actually doing something, I thought was a really nice introduction. To me, that's when the game kind of like started to unfold for me.
Interesting. Yeah. So you mentioned the subtlety of things. I was streaming the game before we did the podcast, and Rob, one of our friends who jumps in on some of the Patreon episodes and all of that. Oh, by the way, Patreon is, we now have Starfield Lorecast Patreon. So if you are interested in supporting the show and getting like t-shirts and stickers and ad-free episodes, all sorts of stuff, patreon.com/Starfield Lorecast. But back to my point, Rob was asking about how similar it feels to Fallout. And my answer to him was that Fallout's world tends to swing really hard in two directions. Either wasteland, desperation, humanity falling apart, everything's terrible, or wacky, zany silliness. It swings way one way and then it swings way back the other way. And the harshness of that is part of the enjoyment of it, right? Like you go from one moment, like these people are living terrible lives and the world sucks, to, this is a hilarious thing that, reminds us of the old world and, comic books or whatever, right? You go back and forth. Whereas this game feels much more subtle. It feels very much more in the middle so far. I'm sure there's some wacky, zany, funny things like the Adoring Fan and a bunch of other things we haven't discovered yet. And I'm sure there's terrible situations that you get in with different locations being more desperate than others. But the spectrum feels more filled in the middle. Like there's a lot more of that. Just this feels like a real place and a real thing. And like this very well could be the future of our own world. And it's kind of a warning because Earth is not doing good. Everybody had to evacuate the planet. We were speculating about that. It is a dust ball. And there's desert and then there's frozen regions, and even the continents aren't even shaped like they used to be anymore. I was trying to go around the planet and look at it, and everything's different. And so clearly humanity has moved on from there. So I thought some of that stuff was really cool.
Yeah, the storytelling that they're telling, and it seems like if we're talking about divergence of storyline right now, it seems like that 2150 seems to be the divergent part where they discover that there's like a giant magnetic storm from the poles. Like any disaster movie that happened since like 2000, it's like, oh, it's the magnetic shifting of the poles, and now Godzilla's going to attack us. That concept,
it summons the kaiju from underneath the ocean. Yeah,
right. And then there's a secret underground world where King Kong fights Godzilla. That plotline I think makes sense, but they don't linger on it too long, which I think is good, because like then they're just retreading ground of like, hey, the destruction of Earth. They're more talking about, okay, we all got together and we decided we're going to fly ships at Earth, and we're all going to live in the stars.
Right.
So I think I'm glad that they kind of were like, this is a thing that happened. You can go see it, but that's not like a main attraction, I guess. It's like a nice little roadside stop, like a pit stop. Yeah. It's pretty much the Buc-ee's of the planets. Like you go, everybody knows it's there. You go, it's large, it's kind of filled with dust, and you move on.
And you move on. Also, don't write us and be like, hey, you guys said there's a hidden world underneath Earth and there's kaiju in this game. That's not really there. It was a joke. Like, inevitably, when you do a show like this, somebody will take something like that seriously, and they'll be like, well, actually, that's not actually in the game. I don't know what they're talking about. And it's like, no, it was a joke. So what other things, like from the gameplay aspect to the performance of the game to some of the other places you've been, what else really stands out to you?
To me, I think there is like an unlimited number of systems in this game that I have no like concept of just like looking through menus of different stuff. Like there's a lot of like weapons workbenches, research workbenches, that kind of stuff. But like shipbuilding, and I just learned how to like dock with another ship. Yeah, like that was like a thing that I could now do, of like how to do that. I think that's super interesting, but I don't fully understand the scope, like the intended scope and the intended way to necessarily play the game. I thought I was going to be a little more stealthy. Turns out I'm like, whatever weapon I have, what kind of frag grenade I have, I'm going to use, because guess what? This game doesn't have that. So I'm just
shooting stuff,
just trying to shoot stuff and try to stay alive for the most part. I'm just like gobbling up every single bit of food I have. I'm just like a little trash can. See, I thought I was going to make the trash can of ships, but really I'm just the trash can of humans, and I'm just gobbling up and consuming everything in my path. Yeah,
I found a cheesesteak, a really square looking little cheesesteak sandwich. And I was like, this is amazing. This is awesome. This little cheese, 5 health. Nope. Just eat it up. Yeah, so it's got that same kind of quality as Fallout, with like all the loot everywhere. But then, you can just eat lots of things in order to get your health back. Skyrim does the same thing.
Right.
But this is a novel thing that the first time they've done is you hit on keyboard land. I'm playing on PC. You're playing on Xbox?
Xbox, yeah.
Okay, so in keyboard land, you hit the F button and you get your little scanner out as you're walking around. And all of a sudden, every item that you can interact with in the room is outlined and highlighted. And it doesn't take too long, a few hours now, for your brain to just kind of sort through, like, okay, that's just garbage stuff. That's cups. That's garbage. Oh, this is food over here. Oh, this is a container because it's shaped like a container. Oh, this is a body I didn't notice underneath this table over here. And so that allows you to pick things out in the environment faster. And everybody loves the aspect of Fallout where you're just kind of like going around and collecting all the junk you can possibly get, right? But that is a very tedious thing to do. And of course, you always end up over encumbered and all of that. In this game, you have a limited amount of carry capacity, and you don't necessarily, at least it seems to me right now, you don't necessarily need to pick up everything. It's more about picking up the things you're looking for. And I have a feeling that ties into the crafting system too at some point, because certain things are better for crafting, but they seem to be very, very specific. It's not like, oh, you pick up all the plastic stuff and now you get plastic out of it, the way Fallout worked. It's more like you're looking for this specific chemical or this specific type of material, and it's just those are the things that you're picking out in the environment, or weapons and gear or food and health packs and med kits or whatever they're called. So that I found it took a little bit of time to get used to, but it also made a lot more sense once I was working my way through like combat, right? You kill a bunch of people in a room, and then you just scan through the room and you find all the bodies again real easy, and you find anything else you want to pick up. I love
that. I think that's a great feature, because like, how many times have we lost a body playing any of these Bethesda games, you know?
Yeah. Speaking about combat, how do you feel about it? I feel like the shooting feels really solid. If anything, I spec'd into melee weapons. I went Ronin with my character, and that Ronin, gives you a melee, like level 1 melee bonus. And swinging the axe feels really slow, but it makes sense because it's like the heavier of the two weapons I've come across for melee so far. A shiv and an axe, I think.
I've really enjoyed. I'm trying to do laser weapons. That's kind of like what I'm focusing on, because I never like ballistics in a game. I never like them. I've never liked them in any game. I'm like, give me something else other than ballistics. So I'm using laser guns, and honestly, I think that's like, not laser guns, but guns in general is the way to play the game, because like the amount of like I am covering the whole time. And this is not like, you know, Call of Duty or like the Division or anything like that, where you're like all based around cover, but like I can like peek out from a corner and get that cover when I'm being shot at by a bunch of energy shots from these characters. And I'm able to get some of that so that I don't take as much damage, and I can kind of peek out and hit people with a few headshots.
So you're picking them off from a distance, where I'm like, my main operation in combat so far has been running up with a shotgun, blasting them in the face, and then hacking them to death if they've got any more, like, because it takes a little while to reload the shotgun. So I'm brawling right up close with everybody. I'm just like beating everybody down real close up.
The shotgun is my last resort, because I run out of ammunition pretty fast, just because I'm spray and pray pretty much the whole way through, because I'm not very good at shooting things in a game. So that's typically what I've been doing, because I just run out of ammo. As I said, I consume and digest everything with a high metabolism. I mean, whatever you got. Yeah. I'm pretty much the junk jet of this game.
Nice. That's your character's name, Junk Jet.
Right. And to a point where I collect so much stuff, I get back on my ship and I feel like that I'm letting my belt out or something like that, because there's no cargo on my ship right now. There's no hold or anything. I just drop everything on top of everyone. I'm sure
so you've just got like a big messy room in the middle of your ship.
There's like 20 guns just kind of like chilling.
I didn't even think about doing that. Just using the ship as like physical storage rather than menu storage.
All these like briefcases of like the suits that I've collected from all the decks. I'm picking up everyone's guns. Anyone I kill, I'm getting their guns, because I'm like, oh, gotta get those credits, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm just like, to ever get back in the ship, and I'm like, all right, unbuckle the belt. Yeah. And it all just kind of like sprays out for everyone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Vasco walks by and just kicks everything out of the way as he walks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Every time I do that, my adoring fans like, you're the best. Thanks, man.
You're the hoarder of Starfield hoarder.
Yeah, it's a common Bethesda tendency with these games.
Totally.
Especially where I've kind of like locked in. It's like, I'm gonna be like stealing everything. Like, that's pretty much my MO, stealing and selling. Because normally I do like a stealth like build, but I'm like, this time I'm really gonna focus on making money and stealing and being like very like, I'm here to make money kind of character.
Interesting. I feel like I'm going more the brawler direction. Mm-hmm. And even though
it's an interesting way to take it.
Yeah, I spec'd into stealth because it comes with Ronin, but it hasn't been, I mean, just like in any of these games, it goes from being like super ineffective because everybody spots you really quickly to all of a sudden you're like just invisible all the time, right? Like,
and you're one-shotting people.
There's like a big old ramp up to that. So far, when I try to sneak, most of the time it doesn't really succeed very much. But who knows? Maybe I'll get better gear and that'll kind of improve as time goes by. But so let's talk about our characters.
Sure.
There was some joking very early on. This was like 2 years ago, and like some of the first episodes we did of the show about naming our characters Jonesy. Do you remember this?
I do remember that. Yeah, because we were gonna name it after the guy, the leaked images of the Starfield man that we decided his name was Jonesy. I think Toon was there for that.
Toon was there. Yeah. So my character's name is Jonesy. He's Jonesy the Ronin.
That's funny because I normally any pirate character I name him Davy Jones because it's my name, and it's actually technically my mother's maiden name.
Oh wow,
Jones. So I'm always like, oh yeah, Davy Jones. for the pirate character's name. So I thought about doing Davy Jones, but then everybody would be like, hello, Mr. Davy Jones. Hello, Davy Jones. How are you? So I just decided on Davy because that's just an easier name for, it's like when I name my Pokemon characters, like the main character, my dude, and they're like, hello, my dude. How are you doing today?
Yeah.
Oh, did you get a good trade, my dude?
Good job, my dude. Cool.
Yes. And if I have a rival, I name him Chip Dip.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So I went Jonesy. I made him look kind of like myself. And then he got the Ronin thing. What perks did you, not perks, what traits? I don't remember what titles. Like, for example, I took Adoring Fan was one of them. We both took that. I also took Freestar and Universalist because I want to be able to get extra quest lines for at least one of those factions, and you can only pick one of them. And then Universalist, there's two. There's Universalist and starts with an E. The two different religious ones, other than the Serpent, which gives you like a stash box in that location.
Enlightened, I believe.
Enlightened, that's it. Yes. And so I did that, but I haven't taken a look at the stash box yet. So those felt like things that give you access to things that you definitely could miss out on if you didn't pick them. So that's why I went.
Have you gotten any like dialogue options around Enlightened or
Freestar? So
Freestar.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So at some point in the main quest line, you meet Sam Coe, who we've talked about on the show, and because he's from the Freestar Collective originally, that gives you opportunities in dialogue with him to say certain things. And so he says things like, you say something like, yeah, it'd be good to go back to the old stomping grounds or whatever, and he's like, oh, another Freestar, yeah, blah blah, and he kind of connects with you over it, which is pretty cool.
So the traits that I took were Adoring Fan, and I did the Child at Heart, which is the getting the parents, where I give 2% of my income to my parents for everything. And I did the Wanted, where I am constantly hunted by mercenaries, but I do extra damage when my health is low, which has actually been really helpful because my health is low a lot of the time. So,
yeah.
And so far, no mercenaries have shown up, but I really like the idea of like I'm doing something really important, and then just like a bunch of mercenaries warp in, and I'm like, God dang it, what is going on?
That's great. And there's some perks on some of the weapons that allow you to do more damage as your health gets lower. Also, I wonder if those two things stack.
Yeah, there's probably a bloodied build somewhere in there for people who are doing that. But I will say that this Child at Heart, I think I'm miscalling it, the one with the parents. I just had a situation where that was really hilarious, like very very self-referential of like when you go to the DMV in Fallout 76. So like when you first get to the planet, you meet them and you're like, oh yeah, hello, how are you doing, Mom, Dad? And they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And they tell you these like inscrutable stories about their retirement. And they're like, oh, I packed you a lunch and here's your backpack. I fixed it up for you. And then like you go and do this mission where you're like it's one of the main quests. It's for the first kind of artifact where you go and do that mission. And the moment you get back, you open the doors to the constellation and there's your parents. We just wanted to come see your work.
That's great.
We just wanted to come see what you were doing. How's life going? We were so happy for you. I'm like, oh my God, this is like real life.
Mom and Dad, these are my friends.
My coworkers.
These are my coworkers and my friends. Please, can we just we'll go get dinner later. Just thanks. Bye.
I so far that has been the Adoring Fan has been like kind of what I expected, but the parents, especially when they showed up at my work, I was like, okay, all right, I see what Bethesda's doing here.
That's amazing because my assumption was that they would just stay in their home and you have to go visit them and maybe you get some like mail from them or something, right? But
I'm half expecting them to be like kidnapped at some point or like something happened to them. Like they're like, we just wanted to come see what you're doing with a bunch of these space pirates.
Your dad is like in debt to the Crimson Raiders for like gambling debts or something. And then you have to like help him out. Oh man, that'd be great. So, okay. So, what was the background you chose?
I did Cyber Runner because I wanted to focus on having that pickpocket stuff kind of like right there, because that was kind of my idea, was that I was going to steal everything. I was debating between that and Scoundrel, but Scoundrel, I was like, I'm either going to pick the like starting skills for the Cyber Runner and then get the Scoundrel skills like pretty much immediately in the first few levels, which is exactly what I did. So I started with the Cyber Runner because I think it was pickpocketing, stealth, and security. Which the lockpicking minigame was a really fresh take on it. I think it's a really fun puzzle to do.
Yeah, I liked it too. For anybody who hasn't seen the lockpicking game, it's like concentric circles with gaps, and then you have to choose a series of keys that fill in the gaps and then remove the circles. And if you do it in the wrong order, you don't end up picking the lock. So you can't just pick any one of those circles on the harder locks, that any of them that fit. You have to think ahead and go, okay, if I put this here and I put this other one here, everything fits all the way down to the smallest concentric circle and the lock will open. So right. It's a unique take on the lock picking mechanism. We haven't seen something like this in a Bethesda game before.
The thing I'm kind of picking up on it is this main quest is meant to, much like I'm thinking about like the Rockstar games like Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption, it's trying to show you off the systems of the game. Like it's really trying to do a slow burn on that, as opposed to, I'm thinking of the opening of Fallout 4, where it's like, escape the vault, scavenge the town, do a big fight at the Minutemen complex. Then you're learning about crafting things. You're using power armor. You're doing everything in this like really like I guess like secure first 2 hours of that game, where you pretty much know all the systems after that. The main quest seems to be attached to a lot of the like knowledge that you'll need to go out and do stuff in the world.
Which makes sense. And it's actually, a lot of people have said it's kind of backwards, whereas a lot of people will play a Bethesda game and do everything other than the main quest, and then at some point come back and do the main quest. That this game, you should actually flip that, because of the things that you learn by going through the main quest and some of the other things that you unlock, but then also the fact that the new game plus aspect of it, which hasn't been spoiled for me yet, so I don't know exactly what that means. Yeah, but the idea is you get through the main quest and then it's almost like everything else is even more opened up in some way, and you can go do whatever you want and then just play the game forever, it feels like. So it's cool. It's a different take on it, which I appreciate.
Right. To me, like, and doing the Lorecast and what we have, like, I'm glad that we're really just doing like September as a month of impressions of like us playing through the game, and then in October kind of like getting with it and coming up with some good lore episodes, because there's a lot to dig into, and I don't want to overconsume it. I don't want to sit down and just like chomp and let everything just like fill me up in the matter of a week or two. Like, this is a game that it seems like I'm going to be playing for probably years. Yeah, of just going through, which is the same for every single Bethesda game that I've ever played. Yeah, that's a good point. Tell you what, why don't we take the mid break, and we got a new review. We can talk about some of the new episodes coming up, the Patreon, and then we'll come back and we'll finish on our impressions of the game. So don't go anywhere. All right, that's enough of that song. Hey, we're in the middle of the show. So let's first, we've got a new review that came in. And by the way, thank you for everybody who has been reviewing the show. This is the highest ranking Starfield podcast out there. Like, we hit 7th place this last week for video game podcasts on Apple Podcasts. So that's crazy. We're currently like at 17th right now. So thank you to everyone who's tuning in, everyone who's rating the show. All of that stuff helps. And we got a new one that came in. Actually, I don't know if we talk about this one. Leedsy73 from Great Britain, who writes, great listening, good chemistry, fun personalities, and the chat flows well. It's a great listen. It's simple and nice. Thanks for that. Yeah. And then we have another one from the United States. This one comes from A9 Dude, who writes, seriously great podcast. I stumbled across the Fallout Lorecast back in July, and with the coming release of Starfield, I thought it would be cool if there was a Starfield Lorecast. Sure enough, Tom had it locked down, and I couldn't be more stoked. I've binged all of the episodes and love
hearing all the wild speculations and space facts, especially from the 2023 perspective. LOL. I can't wait for the release, for all the lore to come from Tom and Dave. Keep up the great work. So thank you, A9 Dude, for that. And as with any of these, if you leave us a 5-star rating, we'll read it out on a future episode of the show, so you can get your words on the show. Also, other fun ways that you can be involved with the podcast. Now that the game is actually out, we've launched the Patreon, and it's very similar to the other Patreons that we do for the Fallout Lorecast or the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. You can get ad-free episodes. The first tier gives you ad-free episodes. It gives you here, I'll read what it says. Support the show and get ad-free episodes released 1 day early, so early access to episodes, and access to the wacky early episodes before the game launched, where we made all sorts of crazy predictions. So what that means is, for right now, we still have the first 20 episodes. The pre-release episodes are still up and available for everybody. So if you're tuning into this episode first and you want to go back and listen to all of those, they're all available still on whatever audio platform you listen on. But maybe by the end of the month or so, those are going to get moved onto the Patreon and kind of out of the way, because people who have been playing the game, they're fun, but they're kind of a bonus thing. We want to focus on the lore and the way the game actually works now that it's out. So we don't want that to be confusing in the feed. But if you still want to access those 20 episodes, you can do so by signing up on the Patreon, and you get access to all 20 of them. So that's for everyone. That's the Explorer tier. And then we have the Captain tier, where you get a sticker every 3 months that you maintain your membership. And these are very specific designs that I actually did, and I think they look really cool. And
I think they are cool.
Yeah, we got like a warning about a sandwich pirate one. We've got like 2 different, like, visit Neon City and that kind of thing going on. And one that's just kind of a general Starfield Lorecast logo, but stickers, and you can put them on your, wherever you want, on your laptop cover, or, find some creative way to display them. Then if you sign up at the Space Pirate level, this one is particularly fun, because not only do you get all the other stuff except for the stickers. Instead of stickers, you get t-shirts every 3 months with those same designs. And then we're going to be doing end of the month patron episodes, where our Space Pirate tier and higher get to join us, just like on the Fallout Lorecast and the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. So those episodes once a month, the last Monday of every month, will be that at around 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, probably. And you guys can all join us, and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. You get to choose the topic for that specific episode every month. And then we have the Space Lord tier. This is the highest tier, and you get a shout out on every episode, because you're extra special and really support the show a ton. So thank you to everyone who's considering doing that. Go to patreon.com/Starfield Lorecast to check all of that out. And we can't wait to give you some cool stuff and give you things for helping to support us. Let's see, Dave, did we have anything else? Oh, we've got the new episodes coming up this month. So this is the plan with the show. There's an issue with doing a lore podcast when the game actually comes out, as opposed to a lore podcast about games that have been out for years. And that's spoiling things. So in order not to spoil too much, the next set of episodes for the next few weeks through the rest of this month will be first impression and very specific to early parts of the game. And we will be having special guests join us to share their impressions and go over the things that they've been doing in the game, the cool stuff that they've been doing, all the fun, wacky things. So, for example, Ken from Chad of Fallout 76 podcast is joining us. Dave and Ken and I used to do the Starfield Hub, the Fallout Hub, the Starfield Hub,
Starfield Elder Hub.
Yeah, there you go. The Fallout Hub podcast. So it'll be like a reunion for us. We've got Zero Period Productions joining us, Blink Blink Games, and a few more that might be ending up joining on some of those episodes or getting their own episodes later on. So this will be a lot of fun for the next month. And then we'll start digging more into very lore specific episodes once everybody's had like a month of time to really dive into the game and, choose if they want to spoil certain things or not, or, how interested they are in that kind of thing. So that's the plan for stuff coming up. I just punched the desk and shook the camera. Dave, anything else we want to talk about before we go back to our first impressions?
Nope.
Dave's good. All right, let's head back to our first impressions. Here we go. All right, we're back. I need to change that so that it fades out when I hit the button again. I thought I set that up, but I guess I didn't.
I like the immediate back into it because
boom,
like we need a DJ scratch or something instead of
yeah, that sounds good. So also, I forgot to mention this. We are streaming this live currently on a Friday. Normally, we do this on Thursdays at 3:30 p.m. I don't know, Dave, if maybe we'll change it to Mondays at some point. We have the patron chats on Mondays. I think that's going to work out for both of us.
We'll see.
We'll figure it out. If it's on different days, that's not a huge issue. But you're welcome to join us at twitch.tv/robotsradio or check out these episodes where you can see our beautiful faces over on the Robots Radio YouTube channel. So you can just search Starfield Lorecast on YouTube. That'll come right up. Also, Dave, I've been creating character build guides, like role play build guides. I put one up yesterday about how to build out Han Solo in Starfield. So like which perks to pick and traits and all of that in order to play as Han Solo. And that's part of the fun of these Bethesda games is you don't have to min-max in order to be like, this is an Elden Ring, right? Like you don't need to get good to just beat the characters you come across in the world. You want to pick certain things and be smart about it, but you don't have to super min-max it. So yeah, so if you want a really fun alternate kind of playthrough, I'll be putting up a number of different builds that I think you guys might enjoy. So all of that stuff at the Robots Radio YouTube channel. So Dave, let's talk about our first impressions some more. We haven't spoken too much about piloting the ship and space travel. How do you feel about that? So
I am big into a number of different piloting ships and shooting at things in space games. Going back to, I mean, one of my first games was Star Fox, like that original NES game. Like that stuff is super in it. I really like the combat itself. Once you're in it and you're in combat and you're like moving around and you're changing your different energy levels based on what you need, like you're moving stuff from your grav drive into your other drives, or you come out, you expect to be going into a situation and that changes and then you're having to switch through it. Increasing your engine speed, like doing those sharp turns. I really like the amount of control that you have. I'm curious about customization and what weapons you can add to your ship and what things you can do. I haven't gotten into that yet because I'm just trying to get enough credits to get a little dangerous out there in space. But so far I've been enjoying that combat. How about you?
It's the whole energy distribution thing, we talked about this on one of the early episodes, is very similar to like an expanded X-Wing and TIE Fighter kind of thing, where you've got different amounts, or FTL is kind of similar. You've got like the different bars, so you can put more bars in laser weapons or ballistics or missiles or engine or shields or grav drive. So like you were saying, sometimes you need to change it on the fly, and so that makes combat a little bit more interesting. Like, oh crap, I need more shields, so I got to reduce my engines or whatever. Just try to balance that stuff out. And then the shooting is interesting because like the laser weapons take down shields faster, but then ballistic weapons work better against the hull. Missiles are kind of seem pretty good for whatever. So far, I haven't really dug into missiles too much. But so far, you're fighting, at least what I've done playing through the main storyline is up against the kinds of, enemies that you're supposed to hit at that level. So I haven't really explored and gotten to the point where like I'm level 10 and I just ran into a level 15. Holy crap, got to get out of here. Like, I'm sure that'll happen at some point. So that's exciting.
I hit a fun kind of battle just in there's a training simulator that you get into for the Vanguard of here's how you pilot. And there's like, you can get it to a certain point and pass the test, and then you can keep on going like past that to get the high score or whatever. And so in those, I was like, oh, you're just given like a standard ship with the layout. And I got to a point where I was like, oh no, this is tough. I'm like really like changing over systems and adding more things to this or that and trying to like balance all that out while I'm trying to track down this bigger ship and these smaller ships that are constantly flying at me. Like there's a lot of juggling that it seems like will happen later on. Outside of that training simulator, I haven't run into anything like that yet, but I'm assuming that, I'm going to be a circus performer when it comes to these piloting, like the piloting of the ships and everything. Like, juggling it all around.
Yeah, I didn't even try the simulator. I haven't done any of that stuff yet, so I'll have to go try that part. But here's another thing I really appreciate, and this was one of those points of contention, I guess we can say, is when people found out that you don't actually land the ship yourself on a planet or pilot it up from the ground into space. And one of the explanations that I gave for that at the time is that it streamlines the experience. I mean, this isn't Star Citizen. This is a Bethesda RPG where you want to get to that next point of interest and do the thing that you want to do. And sometimes you want to go explore, but most of the time you want to just get from one place to another. And I mean, think about how many people will play Fallout or Skyrim or whatever, and they just, once they open up a location, they just fast travel back and forth. They don't actually walk across the map. I think that's the vast majority. In fact, it's novel when people are like, oh, I'm doing a non-fast travel playthrough. Like, that's a novelty kind of thing. So stats show that people just want to get to the thing. And I appreciate that. When you get to a location and it's like, okay, we'll just land the ship. And it's like, boop, we landed the ship. Now, even in the cockpit, you can either get out of the chair and walk through the ship and get out, or you can just exit the ship and it just loads you outside the ship. That stuff is so convenient. And in fact, it's even more convenient than that, because you can open up the quest in your menu just for the quest. You don't have to go into the star map, and you can just say, a route to this point, travel. And it just goes boop and just loads from your menu screen. So you can do as much or as little as that as you actually want. And that doesn't bother me at all. Another point of contention was when you just pick a place on a planet and land, that people were upset that you couldn't just walk off into the distance and just eventually walk around the entire planet. That zone has these artificial boundaries, and once you hit those boundaries, you have to get back in your ship, fly somewhere else, and then land again. But the boundaries are the size of a 4x4 grid of Skyrim. So it's gigantic. And again, why, like, other than just for the case of just wondering what it would be like and the novelty of it and just doing one of those videos where you do something ridiculous and get a lot of views for it, I can't see a reason to have wanted to just keep traveling in a direction unendingly.
Right. I think the implementation of landing on the planets is nice. Like I often, like, I don't play any space game. Let me just speak for myself. I don't play any space game where I am landing on a planet and expecting to walk all the way around, like, the circumference of the planet, unless I'm just there to say that I did it.
Right.
Like,
right. It's like a one-time thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm never doing that. I'm landing my ship and then I'm going out from the ship as a point of origin to go and do different things across the planet.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that's how everyone plays No Man's Sky. Even though theoretically you could probably just keep wandering and going and going. Right. That's not what you do. You go a certain distance from your ship, and then eventually you're like, oh, crap, I got to get back to my ship anyway because I've got to bring this stuff back with me or whatever, or I need to travel to another location. And then you just head back to the ship and you take off. Right.
I do think, and this is not like talking about the ship, but I do think the menus are a little clunky. I don't know what it is for me. Like the menus just seem a little like, oh, what's this? What's this? Maybe that's just like 4 or 5 hours into it. I'm not like 100% like cool with everything. And I'm so used to, like, the Pip-Boy has been the same forever. Skyrim's menu took a while for me to get used to, with the, like, oh, you got to look up certain ways to get to certain things. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that the favorites are still there to, like, favorite items and put, like, your med packs and stuff in there. But the actual landing, I'm perfectly fine with. I only had one mishap with landing, where I tried to land in New Atlantis for the first time, and I accidentally selected. I just thought I was selecting New Atlantis for landing zone, but I actually chose somewhere that's like outside of New Atlantis. Okay. So I, like, land in a field and I, like, get out of my ship and I'm like, this doesn't look like New Atlantis. And then I see it off in the distance. I see it, like, right on the edge of I'm like, do I want to walk there, or do I want to just get back in the ship and try this again? I'm like, I guess I'll get back in the ship and try this again. So I had to walk back to the ship, get in it, take off, and then land again.
I can see how that could be frustrating, but that's also kind of awesome that can happen. Yeah. And, like, you just see it in the distance and you could walk over there if you wanted to, or you just fly again.
Like, I'm good. I don't need I don't need that.
Yeah. As for the menu system, yeah, it is a different menu. I'm starting to get acclimated after about 4 or 5 hours. Starting to kind of just get where everything is now. There's a lot of stuff to see. I think that's part of the complexity of it. It's just got more stuff than other games. And I do like the favoriting thing. I do like the way everything's like in your inventory is set up into subcategories. That's pretty easy to navigate. The only thing I would recommend is when you pick up a book or something that you need to read, that you can, well, two things. When you're picking up items, being able to just read the book and then put it back down, not necessarily have to pick it up and then find it in your inventory would be nice. Although you can read it when you pick it up, it just goes in your inventory. So that's kind of, that could be a little bit streamlined. Right. And then there was another issue, but it just slipped out of my brain. So it must not be that important. But really not a whole lot of issues with the inventory system at all, and the menu system. I think it works pretty well for what it does. So we're getting close to the end of the episode, Dave. And before we head out, everybody's wondering, how buggy is the game? That's one of the big questions. That was one of my biggest concerns. Early reports have said that it's the least buggy Bethesda launch ever. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I have played, a little history. I have played Fallout 3 when the Pit released. If you remember the release of the Pit, the first day it released, and the entrance to it was a giant yellow exclamation point in the game that nobody could get past. It was
asset missing.
Asset missing, yes. I have played from then on out, so you can imagine the giant mutated power armor poses that people had in Fallout 76. I have run into absolutely zero bugs in this game. No weirdness really whatsoever. The only weirdness I had was I landed on the settlement. I went to a bar to talk to some guy about some information. And then I go to exit the bar and I see down the hallway this guy just like sprinting at me. All the way he's just like sprinting as hard as he can. I'm like, is this guy going to attack me? Like, I feel like that this guy's going to tackle me or something. And he walks up to me and he was like, hey, just know that the trade thing is right outside your ship. So if you need any items set off, you can just trade them there.
So you circumvented that guy when you got off the ship, and he would like hunted you down.
Just like,
that's great.
And then he ran off, and I started following him, and he's like jumping around like, I got to get back to the ship, but he's not taking like the pathways. He's like jumping over rails, like trying to parkour over everything.
That's great.
He's doing a good job. Like, it's not like he's getting stuck on anything. He's just like full sprint, full tilt doing stuff. But like, is that a bug, or that's not really a bug if he's doing the right thing. He's just like, wait, I forgot to tell you something, but just really
this is very important.
Right.
You can't wait. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I saw that guy immediately.
I love a silly bug like that though. That's perfect, because I'm like, why the hell is this guy running at full force right
That's
at me?
Great.
Just like,
yeah, it feels like the courier when the courier sees you and like bolts his way over to you in like Skyrim, right?
Right. So I'm on an Xbox Series X, Series S.
How's performance on that? I'm sure a lot of people are curious, because a lot of people have Xbox Series S.
Performance is 100% fine. Frankly, this is one of the few games that I've played. I'm a big, I went at 60 FPS. I went performance over graphics, upscaling. I don't really notice 30 FPS being a big deal breaker for me.
Yeah.
And normally
if it's steady, that's the thing. It's
steady.
The unsteadiness.
The whole time.
Yeah, that's the problem, is when it fluctuates, that's when you feel it. If it just sits at 30 or 60, you're good. Like, it just feels fine.
Everywhere loads relatively well. Like I can't imagine what it's like without an SSD. But I mean, there is a little bit of load time, but I think that's the same for pretty much everything. And we're talking about load times in the modern day are 5 seconds, 10 seconds, something like that. Like
right.
not like when you used to change areas in Oblivion, you'd sit there for a good 2 or 3 minutes.
Oh my God.
On the area to load. But my performance on Series S has been great. My performance, the Series S performance on the game has been great, but no major glitches, no, the game is stopping. Like, I gotta crash. Like, how many times did any Bethesda Fallout 4 will crash all the time? I'll be in downtown Boston, on super modern hardware, and it's just like, it'll crash it. I haven't had anything like that in like the super crowded areas of Neon. I'm in New Atlantis or anything like that.
Yeah, so I've been playing on PC, and I've got a pretty beefy PC, like a 12,700K CPU, and then I upgraded to a 4090 graphics card, like, I don't know, 6 months ago. Forked out the money for it because I use this PC for everything, and it actually even helps rendering videos and things like that faster. And so pretty beefy PC on an ultra wide screen, so not quite 4K, and I can run it everything maxed out, like absolutely maxed out, and I'm hitting like 90, 100 frames per second. Pretty standard until I go into a city, and then it dips to like 50, 40 something at the lowest I've seen. But that's having everything maxed out, and this is one of those games that's going to last us a decade, so who knows what, you know, the next series of hardware is going to be able to run it as. And the other thing is, I've noticed in tweaking some of the settings that, like many Bethesda games, this game's actually more CPU bound than most video games. So even if I reduce, say, like the shadow quality or the shaders and that stuff, I don't get that many extra frames per second. It really has to do with the fact that, like, you're in a city and there are dozens of NPCs walking around, and there's lots of garbage all over the place. A lot of
information to kind of like dig through. And
yeah, so it's very CPU specific, but it's on an SSD and it loads very quickly and all of that. So I haven't had any issues with that from like a platform perspective, and the graphics look great with everything turned up. No issues at all. The only things I've come across, the only bugs I've come across, the most expected bug is sometimes and this happens with every game, the physics glitches out a little bit, but not in the, like, you bumped the table and now everything on the table slides a little bit kind of thing that like Fallout will do. I haven't seen any of that, but I did fight some, I think it was when I was fighting the Crimson Raiders, and I blew up one of their backpacks in a very small room, like their little boost packs, and they just launched like into the ceiling but couldn't go any further because they were in a small room, and then they just kind of like spazzed out and then went like through like the equivalents of like the side of a, I don't know, like a desk, almost like a cubicle wall. And then the guy was like hanging halfway through the cubicle wall, like in a very relaxed pose, basically like, hey, good to see you, buddy. And I was like, that's awesome.
That's just space magic.
It's just space magic. I mean, that's just, you know, too much physics information in an area where you can't do anything with it.
Right.
That's normal for most games. The only other glitch I actually got that was a legitimate glitch was a menu glitch. And it was because I was in one of the sections where they're like, hey, hit the tab button to go here. Now hit this menu item to do this, and then do this thing. And somehow I didn't notice, and I did something else to get to the same result. So I bypassed the need to do that. And then from that point on, for like the next 5 or 10 minutes, the notification wouldn't go away at the top. Even when I hit the button, it was saying to hit. And I tried reloading, and it was still there. And so I just loaded back to before that showed up, just like 5 minutes back in the past. And then I just went in the order that it was asking me to go in, and the menu cleared up. So it wasn't a huge issue. And I'm assuming
having less bugs than you are with any of this. I haven't noticed. And I'm like, you know, as I talked about, I'm unloading the belt of various items into my ship. Like, here's 50 items I'm throwing onto the ground, and my ship is still fine. And everybody's walking around, the adoring fans, like, I love you. And so
that's great. Yeah. And I'd imagine that, like, once I got to another thing that replaced whatever was supposed to be at the top of the screen in that menu with something else, it probably would have cleaned itself up anyway. I just didn't go far enough to do that. So, and if that's the only bug that I found in the first 5 hours of the game, that's amazing. Well, I don't think we've played a Bethesda game without any weird bug in 5 hours ever.
As far as like stability, this is the best Bethesda game that they have, like, best stability they've released at launch, like, by far.
Yeah. So to wrap it up, to go back to a little bit of the lore aspect, I'm very excited to see where else things go. The main storyline seems to have some very interesting connections to these artifacts. I really get the sense that they're treading the line between religion and, you know, atheist agnosticism, and trying to understand, is there like a guiding hand in the universe, or is there not? What does that actually mean? So they're exploring some of those mysteries, and I have a feeling they're going to firmly plant us in a place where they show you more, but they don't actually answer the question. So you like a good movie where you leave with more questions than you came in with. And so you're like, oh, it totally supports my views. But then somebody else can be like, no, it totally supports my views, even though you have different views. So I feel like that's working really well. And then even these side quests, there's so many little side quests that pop up, even just walking around the city, that the world just feels full of life and stories and of characters and events, and we haven't even scratched the surface of it yet. So I have a feeling we're going to have plenty of things to cover in the future on this show.
Yeah. What's one thing that you're looking forward to? It doesn't have to be anything. Just
I love so far I've been finding some really cool gear, even just going through some of the quest lines. Like I found my first 3-star item. Like you have like general items, then like 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, and they kind of, the color spectrum from like blue up through orange or whatever. And I'm super hyped about like finding really cool gear. Really, like I'm sure there's going to be some unique things out there somewhere. I haven't seen anything like that yet, but I bet that's a thing. I just, every time I get more goodies, and I'm like, oh, let's equip this. Let's see what this gun does. That stuff's great. So looking forward to more of that. What about you?
House of Vayroon. I'm like into that. I'm excited. I'm excited waiting for that to happen. Everything that I have seen lore wise from that, and like peering over their armor, like some of their armor is in the museum, and I'm like looking at it. I'm a big Dune fan, and so this feels the most like that inspiration in there. And so I'm so into it. I'm ready for it.
Awesome.
My body is ready.
My body is ready for the serpent. That sounds like a terrible pickup line. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for making this podcast a success. And as we mentioned before, if you'd like to support us and join us at the end of the month to chat about your experiences in Starfield, the Patreon is available, patreon.com/Starfield Lorecast. And we will be back next week with another episode and a special guest. So there's lots to do with that coming up. Dave, I know you've got other stuff to share before we head out.
Yeah, Rad Rolls has started their Starfield limited series campaign, where we are a bunch of prisoners of the Freestar Collective exploring a ghost ship. What has happened on this ghost ship? How are we going to recover it? And all of that stuff between a bunch of really, really broken, terrible people that are the characters that we play. That's Rad Rolls on all podcast services. It's a tabletop role-playing game podcast that we do actual play on. So check it out. If you like Starfield, if you like listening to that actual play TTRPG stuff, we've got a lot of great episodes revolving around Starfield all through September into October. So give it a shot, give it a listen, give it a nice review. While you're there, rate some Starfield Lorecast stuff. Enjoy all sorts of fun Starfield things. And if you're into other Bethesda games like Fallout and Elder Scrolls, I do Lorecasts about those as well. You can look everything up that I do and a bunch of other creators do at robotsradio.net. And that's going to do it for this episode. We would love to hear also your perspectives on the game. Even if you don't join us on the Patreon, come join us on the Robots Radio Discord server. There is a channel for every show on the network, including the Starfield Lorecast, and you can share pictures of your characters and stories about cool things that happened and all of that stuff. We would love for you to be part of the community. Dave, I think we're at like over like 4,000 people now on the Discord. It's ridiculous. Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. So thanks everybody for being here. Chat, thank you for joining us live, and we will see you again next week. Stay safe out there in that crazy galaxy. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. We hope that you enjoyed this show.
Did you know that parodies are copyright protected?
Tell a friend and review
on iTunes
or other services.
Dave and Tom excited for Starfield. Let's all speculate and wear no shoes.
Hey, why aren't we wearing any shoes?
Because shoes rhymes with iTunes, and that's the best I could think of.